guys, what's going on? It's Tech Tuesday. Had a really big lunch, had to use our mobile pooping device. Works out really, really well. Sometimes the toilets get backed up here and you just gotta do what you gotta do. But guys, today we've got a pretty cool car. It's the Pro R. And we're gonna go over some things and what we're working on and kind of all the ins and outs on it right now, what we've seen. But in order to do that, we gotta go over to the man himself, Justin Smith.
Steve, did you wash your hands?
Nope.
Sir, that's the only thing that I have. I have one question, that's it. Okay, number two.
Number two, yes sir.
Number two. Also, no, we are not sponsored by Wolfwise, just a heads up.
But if
nobody
you're
pays
looking,
us.
we should be.
So Steve couldn't help himself. I know the bathroom's only 50 feet away. Don't know why I had to
I'm
go
an
there.
outdoor man.
Outdoors,
outdoor
okay.
man.
So we are here on Tech Tuesday. Thank you for tuning in. We're kind of going over more Pro R stuff. By the way, we are not paid by Polaris to talk about Pro Rs. We just kind of like them a little bit at this moment, at least until we've driven them enough to tell you one way or the other. A lot of people ask us when we're going to do our review of the Pro R. Not until we drive the piss out of it. And that way we can tell you an honest opinion of what this thing is going to be able to do, good or bad. We have driven a little bit, so we can give you some insight, but nothing good enough for a review. Mitch.
Hello.
You have actually been working hard, diligently, I should say, on our Pro Rs with lots of different products, and you can weigh in on a whole bunch of this stuff. But Mitch has had one of these things completely apart, short of taking the motor and tranny out of it, going over some of the dimensions and parts that we're going to be making as Josh scales mount shock therapy over there for behind the scenes. Thanks, Josh. But we can't tell you everything about the ins and outs of this car yet because we haven't experienced ourselves. But we will tell you everything that we've seen by taking apart the things we've taken apart so far.
Yeah.
I mean, obvious, it stands to reason that we can't talk about what we don't know. One thing before we go into the Pro R stuff is we want to remind you that we just dropped a new product, and this is a shameless plug. Steve, shameless plug.
Shameless plug, guys. If you go onto our website or you go onto our YouTube channel, we have just released the front RS1 limit straps, and they're also live on the website. That's www.shocktherapyusa.com. Back to you, Justin.
Thank you very much, Steve. Shameless plug. That was
Perfect.
Yeah, nailed it.
Well done.
So, new product on the site. You guys, if you have an RS1, go there and check it out. Pro R. Obviously, when we get a new vehicle, the first thing we're going to do is drive it. We're going to get a feel for how it rides and the ride quality, things that we do and don't like about what it does. Ideas amongst all of us. Hey, if somebody's driving this fast in the desert, it's perfect. Or if somebody's driving super slow in rocks, it's a little stiff. Or if someone's driving it in rocks, it's super plush and perfect. But if somebody's driving it super fast in the desert, it's going to bottom out everywhere. We find those things about new vehicles and then kind of meet in the middle and decide, here's where we're going to go to try and cover everybody for a start. And here's where we're going to go if somebody's specifically trail and somebody is specifically desert or dunes. So we end up with multiple shock internals and spring kits according to what you're going to do with Pro R. Having said that, I can tell you one thing, that the Pro R is probably the best riding from a bump, whoop, rock, turning standpoint, handling standpoint, best riding UTV, factory without any changes or mods to it on the market. I think that's it's not a bold statement, it's just true. Now, one of the reasons for that is some of the suspension geometry, how it's designed, how things pivot. And we'll go into some of those details later because we've taken our ferro arm and we've scanned everything in the front. We can turn that into drawings on the board for you guys to see how this thing works geometrically. Later, we'll have that in the next few weeks. But from a shock standpoint, the new shocks that are on these with dual adjusters from Fox, both an electronic live valve adjuster on the compression side and an electronic live valve adjuster on the rebound side with the computer algorithms that are in place to control it, does an amazing, amazing job. Having talked with Fox a little bit about the development of this car, they were given a lot more time to work on this thing than typical UTVs in the past. A lot of new UTVs, shock manufacturers only get a few days. They don't get very much time to test. But with this, that wasn't the case, and it definitely shows. It rides really, really nice factory. Well, why am I touting all that when that might mean that we don't have very much to do? Well, this goes into the fun part. We can now talk smack about a few things, right, Mitch? Yeah. So from a ride quality standpoint, there's a lot that you can do with the Pro R, both from a computer side, programming side, from a spring side. We've already gotten many customers who have gotten some of these Pro Rs, which are hard to get, calling us going, please tell me you have a spring kit because my car is already settled 2 or 3 inches. So the typical spring issues that you see in all the UTVs has not been cured on the new Pro Rs. You're going to have settling. If you add accessories, then clearly you're going to have more settling. So we do have spring kits that are on their way for the Pro R. It takes a little bit of time because we have done some of the spring kit testing already, but it takes a few months to get springs by the thousands so that we're ready to go. We'll let you know when we have that stuff. Shock internals, we do have some directions that we're going inside the shock, but it rides pretty badass at the moment, stock. As soon as you add weight to it, that's another consideration. As soon as you want to go in different terrains, it's another consideration that we'll be able to help you with. But what we're already doing right now, maybe go to the other side. Mitch, you can kind of give everybody a heads up on some of the things that we're in the process of tackling. This one actually doesn't have links on it already. I was just thinking about links myself, right?
Yep.
So already, Mitch, take over on links that are already existing.
Yeah, so linked, obviously the front link is already done. That's on the other 4-seater at the other shop right now.
And where is that, Mitch?
Front link right here.
Replacing that one.
Yep, this very similar to kind of what Justin was saying earlier. It still has its faults being super skinny and still a rubber style mount to it. Tends to fail, tends to break or bend the link there, so we're gonna beef that up, make that a lot nicer. The sway bar arm, we're gonna do some cool trick stuff to where the link actually connects to the sway bar itself. Maybe some stuff in that area to move.
You're gonna have adjustability, right?
I don't know if we were giving it all away yet or not, but.
Well, I'll step on you for 1 second. So there'll be multiple sway bar rates available for this car to tune for what you're doing. There'll also be multiple hole adjustments in the sway bar arm that we're in the process of making. This stuff is all about a month out, maybe a little bit longer, but we're in the process of doing it. Other stuff, Mitch?
I love having multiple holes as options too.
You like that?
I want to throw that out there.
Steve's kind of a hole guy.
Multiple holes is always a great option,
I mean,
guys.
looking over there, it looks like he's more of a bucket guy right now.
I was ice fishing. Brown trout.
Brown trout, clearly. Mitch, what else?
Full tie rods, we already got the inner joint that connects to the factory rack as well, so we had the tie rod lengths going for that. Our new pin kit that we just released not too long ago is also going to work with this as well.
So that replaces ball joint?
Ball joint style, it's gonna basically replace that to where you can actually adjust the rod end up or down on that itself. Correct all the bump steer. Again, a tie rod system, and then on the end of the shock, the loop that goes over the axle itself, we are making one of those as well. I'm actually working on the limit straps right now to make sure that everything fits and cycles on that. So, I mean, there's 6 or 7 things right there just on the front end. Just in the
front.
Yeah.
Mitch, I'm going to go back a hair and talk about tie rods. Yeah. So, one of the things that are already coming back to us from customers is how weak the tie rod is. Now, people aren't typically breaking the tie rod in the beefiest portions, right? Between here and here, that's not a break point yet. But up inside this boot, we didn't take it completely apart for you guys, but inside this boot is the inner joint. That inner joint is quite a bit smaller in diameter than the rest of this tie rod. So out here, we're probably 3/4 of an inch thick. It bolsters up here at the threaded portion. This section that's connected to the inner joint, this is about 5/8. But inside this boot, it narrows down to about 400 thousandths. So that's about 12 millimeter, 12 mil being like 410 or 12, I forget what it is, 430. But about 400 thousandths in thickness. That's less than 1/2 inch, thicker than 3/8. That narrow portion right at the inner joint is a break point. And we've seen this from racers, we've seen this from other guys that are playing with these things already. All these front end loads get higher when you start putting wheels and tires on them. Everyone's gonna put wheels and tires on them, end of story, so might as well get that stuff fixed. So we are designing inner joints already that are thicker from 400 to 580, so that goes basically to 5/8. So we shouldn't see any shear points on the inside, and you'd have a tie rod kit available that bolts in, takes care of that weak point. Also with a BSD pin kit so you can adjust bump steer out of this. How much bump steer is in this car? Can't tell you yet. The reason we can't tell you yet is because we designed our own alignment plates, and those will be here tomorrow. We're gonna cycle it after that. We also we wanna cycle multiple Pro Rs because we find that one might be not a Pro R in particular, but one model, say for instance a Turbo S or an X3, one might be perfect, one might be screwed, one might be halfway as far as the problems are concerned. So we want to check a few of these before we give you any numbers to kind of go from. Last thing we want to do is talk a ton of smack when there's only one vehicle that had that problem. Steve.
People want to know about the vertical radius rod in the rear right there.
So Steve, why don't you point that out? Let us know what you got going on.
So if you guys were wondering, this long shaft right here is the, wow, I just lost it. It's the
Steve, it's because you grabbed the shaft a little bit tight,
I
sir.
slid down. I'm sorry. It was a little dirty. It was dirty. I was cleaning it.
Okay.
So it is our sway bar link that we actually do have designed. Yeah, Mitch had one on there, but it is about the size of a tie rod.
Yes.
Or radius rod.
Yeah, I think the actual length on that's about 18 and an eighth, something around there. I don't know why I have these arbitrary numbers in my head, but I do. Ask me about the firing order of a small block Chevy from when I was a kid. I probably know. But we have radius rods coming. We'll talk about those here in a second. We have sway bar links already done, and then we're just producing. Right, literally, we have the originals on our vehicles. We've already tested them, and we have production already in process for making those. So you'll have links here shortly. Steve.
People would like to know, because you were talking about tie rods, are we going to do a steering rack for this car?
Yes, we are in the process of designing our steering rack. It's very complicated because the EPS system bolts directly to it. It's all kind of an integral rack and power unit together. So it's complicated. We're in the middle of doing it. Our racers have already asked for it. We've had other customers already tell us that they're having EPS issues, meaning that the EPS is losing power throughout a ride, but only with guys that are really beating on it in rocks, only with guys that are just running through a lot of chop and chatter that's exciting the EPS system and possibly overheating it. We're working on a system that'll cure that. It'll be a little while. Racks take some development, trust us. We spent 2 years on our X3 rack before you ever saw it.
Especially this one with the power steering unit.
Yeah, it's a lot to it. Steve Moore?
So I've had this question on Instagram and on Facebook. People are asking, they've been hearing a lot about an oil pump issue or in the system. Have you heard of this?
Okay, so let me put this to bed. The side-by-side guys had an issue.
Side-by-side blog, yes.
Blog, right? They had an issue with theirs, but the engine design and oiling system design in this particular UTV was redesigned so that it would not have oil scavenge issues. So you could go sideways, straight up hills and down, and not lose oil pressure compared to the engine prior to this that was in other models. You could say that the oiling design of this system, the scavenge and oil pressure pump design in this, is very similar to a dry sump, which is what you would run in any road handling car so you don't have any oil pressure loss. I seriously doubt that the oil pump and oiling system in this is the reason why those guys had problems. I don't know why they had one. It might be a fluke, I don't know. But I bet a lot of money against it. It's pretty nice design.
Says they were doing cyclones?
Yeah, that's,
what that
you know,
means.
donuts, sideways, this, that,
just
drifting,
doing,
all kinds of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, sideways action, if you've seen the drawings of this system, which I have seen some, you know, sideways does not affect oil pressure in this engine package, period. It just doesn't. So I don't know what caused theirs, but I would race the piss out of that on a road course right now without worrying about it. Steve,
No, I can't read that one.
please read it.
No, that one can't be read.
No, come on, say it.
Lena Twan said, Steve, I want to have your baby.
What? Lena. Lena.
I've got
Lena,
enough kids.
let's talk about this. You know he's married, right? Lena, you know,
I hope I
you
know
know he's
Lena.
got kids, right? Lena, you know his wife will absolutely throat punch you and then dump you in the lake. You have to know that. So you might want to take that back.
And I'm in the doghouse now for reading that. Thank you, Justin.
I made you read it.
You did.
Yeah.
I got a pass there for
So
sure.
back to where we were.
Let's go back to the actual stuff at hand.
Sway bar links in the process, radius rods. We have had customers already call us having bent radius rods on these. We are in the process of working on those. Even though the upper radius rod on this is 1.25 inches, the lower is 1.5 inches in diameter, wall thickness plays a huge part in whether they're going to last or not. I don't have the exact number for you, but we have had customers that have already bent those, and we're in the middle of making you some. So we'll have chromoly, we'll probably have billet. We will have a high clearance available for these because factory lower is high clearance, right? Toe link.
That's the cool one.
Mitch,
That's
let's
the cool
talk
one.
about that. And I'll jump in when you can, but let's
Yeah.
point at the toe link for Jake to show everybody what's
So
up.
basically this rod or tube that goes through the middle of the arm, it connects to the spindle. This bolt is basically like a,
It's called an eccentric adjustment.
yeah, okay, that's perfect. But when you turn this washer is kind of ovaled, so that will actually allow this rod or tube to move forward or backward, which in return will move your hub in or out.
Controls toe by rotating the bolt.
Yep. Now what we're doing and what we've kind of seen and kind of heard is that bolt and that washer will basically almost strip itself, but not really strip itself. I guess that's not the right word to say.
It'll kind of gall up on the inside because there's so much load on it, and you can't get it out or adjust it after a few adjustments.
Yep. So what we're going to do is basically create a clevis with a through bolt. This is all going to be beefy, big stuff as well, but you're going to have right hand thread on one side, and then where it connects to the frame up there, I don't know if you'll be able to see it
I don't
or
think
not,
you can
Jake,
see it.
but it connects up there right next to the arm. You can kind of see it. We're going to have a rod end on that side with the opposite thread, so the way you would actually adjust this would, in return, you'd spin the tube, just like you would for a radius rod, adjusting your camber or whatever on a radius rod. This would be kind of the same design. So it takes the faulty, I don't really want to call it faulty, but
You know what, Mitch? Let me step in for a second. I'm going to throw a little bit of race history in that, because you go back to late 90s, early 2000s, early trophy trucks design and Class 8 stuff. Class 8 being factory frame, suspension geometry. A lot of guys are running the factory eccentric cam design bolt, that oblong washer allowing you to spin the bolt and run an arm in and out to adjust the alignment. And that's standard issue for a ton of road cars. But all racers got away from those or would weld them in place. The reason is they go out, they hit stuff hard, and that adjustment would rotate slightly, and that would run the arm out and change camber, or it'd run the arm out and change toe, and they're screwed for the race. So eccentric cam stuff doesn't work in heavy duty off-road. It doesn't work when you got a heavy wheel and tire. It doesn't work when you're abusive or you're the fastest guy in your group. It's not going to hold. And we've already seen racers who have been racing the system have that come loose multiple times in a race. We're getting rid of that with our design. So that bolt is gone, that washer design is gone. It's a solid link that's not movable, and you can rotate the toe link to adjust it and jam nut it just like a radius rod or any other tie rod and lock it down and not have it come loose. So getting rid of what we're seeing from our customers and feedback out there in the industry. Steve.
One thing I think that's pretty rad, and I don't know if you already touched on it, is the hardware that's used on this is pretty bitchin'. It's
Yeah,
all-
point
it's
that
all-
stuff out, Mitch.
It's
It's
all
huge.
super big hardware. Which
I
is,
mean, you can
is
see it
rad.
right there. It's kind of funny. When I first went to go take the shocks off this, I grabbed a 19 or an 18, and it's like
Socket.
2 times bigger than that. This is all 21 millimeter socket stuff, and then 14 millimeter bolt. So all the idea of everything is 14 millimeter. Even the shocks too.
What's 14 millimeter in like America? I think that's like 560 or 70. I don't know what it exactly is. But it's smaller than 5/8 and it's bigger than 1/2 inch.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, massive. So that's really cool. That was like the biggest thing that I saw even just diving into it, was just the time that they took to really beef up, I guess, the whole thing on it. But
badass.
we kind of touched on that. So other stuff, obviously, just like the shock stuff, we have rear limit straps going for this too. If you look up in here too, Jake, this is actually the other sway bar arm. This is also a 3-piece design on the rear. We're gonna make the same thing as the front. So this arm is actually gonna have adjustability in it too, so you can control the stiffness of it or softness of it if you want. You pair that with our link, it'll be pretty sweet.
Lots of adjustability. So if you're gonna take this thing rock crawling, then we have the ability to turn the sway bar down a little bit for you guys and get some more articulation. And or if you're gonna run it even harder than most RZR guys, then we have the ability to turn the sway bar up a little bit and stop some body roll. If you take a look at that rear shock real quick, some of the things that are on these, I'm gonna point a few out. It has a stainless steel liner on the body, so you're not gonna see body wear on these new shocks between the divider itself or possibly say a spring. If a spring fades or compresses and causes the divider to go crooked, you won't see external body wear because of the liner. So expensive components into these shocks to allow it to live a long time without any issues. Steve.
A lot of people are experts on here saying 9/16 would be the in-between of that. I guess we didn't think of that number because I didn't think of it. So 9/16 is the design, but people are also asking, Justin, how are they gonna change the belt? Is that gonna be hard? Because it's in such a different spot.
It is. I mean, so Jake, take a look back here. I mean, between the seats, looking at that plastic firewall, the belt is behind that. We have actually changed the belt at the Polaris event, where we got a chance to look at this thing completely apart and take one that's complete like this, pull the seats out of it, pull the firewall out of it, and change it. The first time you do it, it might take you 15 minutes. The second time you do it, it's going to take probably between 5 and 7 minutes. It's not hard. Everything pretty much unclips right out. The seats are fast. The belts are not an issue. The plastics around it are all quick disconnect. And the cover on the front of the clutch is half quick disconnect in a couple 10 mil. And the clutch itself is the same as any other previous Polaris, with one threaded bent tool to allow you to do it.
Which is attached to the clutch cover as well.
Good point, actually. So instead of losing that thing, it's actually clipped into the clutch cover. So you got a place to put it and you're not going to lose it. I don't think that belts are that big a deal. Now, if it's a race car and all the seats are mounted solid and it's a full firewall car, that's a whole nother story. It's a lot of effort, but they're going to cure that in the fabrication. From a plate car standpoint, I just don't think that's a thing that I would determine or use as a determining factor in whether you buy the car or not, or UTV, according to East Coast guys be pissed off at me calling them cars. But don't worry about the belt stuff. Also, the belts are a lot better than previous years. Wider center to center, longer belt, more heat dissipation, more cooling, dual inlets. One comes from right here, all these inlets right here. That's actually a filtered intake for the clutch, pretty badass. And there's actually another filtered section for the clutch on one of these inlets right here. I think it's the other side because that's the air cleaner side. But dual inlets, higher flow numbers, better cooling fins on the clutch assembly. Yeah, if you guys make 500 horsepower, it's a whole nother thing. But in the stock 225 to 275, I just don't see there being very much belt issue. Steve, you got another one? What do you got?
No, but I just want to say one of the guys on here named Ismail said we sent him the wrong shocks. So if you want to email me, steve@shocktherapist.com, I'll look into that for you. Sorry, I'm so used to the USA because it'll go to either one.
I think that was Ishmael, right?
ISMAEL_TBZ.
Oh.
I don't know. Oh, Ishmael?
Yeah, maybe. See what I did?
I do. But there was also a shout out on here from Seamus Smith. He said, big thanks to your heli for checking in on us in Laughlin when we rolled.
Awesome.
So,
man, we really try. We try hard to let everybody else know what's going on. And we see an issue that's Dominic Galindo, that's Josh in the back videoing, and typically my wife in the front seat too. They are on all the radio frequencies, telling Best in the Desert and everybody else what's going on at what race mile. So, and if you guys had another problem of some kind and needed help, they would have landed and they would have helped you. So I'm glad that they could have done something to help there. Sorry you guys rolled. That sucks. So moving rearward, right? Radius rods.
Yep.
Mitch, tell a story.
No, I'd rather not.
No,
No,
not at all.
I'm gonna keep that one out because I already feel bad. So.
All right, well, we'll leave it out. But we do know from personal experience that the radius rods on these might bend a little easy. Just saying, but we'll leave it at that. We might have more details in the future. But radius rods are on their way. We're actually working on billet as well as chromoly. We're gonna have chromoly ride faster than the billet stuff. The joints that are on these radius rods, if you look down here, you can see they're huge. So 3/4 inch radius rods that we're known for, having the biggest radius rods in the industry. Steve, tell everybody how big our radius rods are.
3/4 of an inch.
Which are the biggest.
The biggest on the market. And you can buy those guys at www.shocktherapyusa.com.
Oh, shameless plugs. Love those. We actually are looking at a 7/8 rod end system for the radius rods on these to try and keep them huge.
Huge. Somebody wants to know if Mitch backed into a cow.
Excellent idea. Totally possible.
That probably would have been
There's
cooler than what
there's a lot of questions on what happened, but a cow was the question.
Definitely not a cow.
About shit a cow.
He don't want to touch it.
No.
I'm sorry, guys. He's not going to talk about it.
No.
It's too soon. Way too soon. Next, things that we have coming on this.
Pull plate was something that can attach to that. That's going to be
Correct.
pretty cool.
We're going to have pull plates on these. We're going to have some other upgrades that we can't really talk about very much when it comes to hubs, axle, brake, and some more shock stuff that we really can't talk about too. But just a hint. Steve.
Justin, when you go out and test a brand new car like this, are you scared to break something because it might be hard to, say, get a stock part back on it to where you can then move forward with testing stock? Are you afraid of that ever?
So, really good question. In the past, absolutely not, does not cross our mind, do not care. Today, I mean, it's hard enough to get one of these cars to begin with. Do we drive slower because of it? No. Honestly, it's in the back of our mind that we might not be able to test. We might have a car dead for a while, but it does not slow us down. And if we wreck some parts, we wreck some parts. We have two of these kind of for that reason. It might be worth pointing that out. We have a 4-seater, we have a 2-seater. We're trying to get, obviously, our testing done between the two. But when it comes to components that we're designing and making, we can work on both cars for that reason if we break one. We are a little bit more careful, though, if it's a customer's car. That would definitely change our attitude. And if we find with a customer's car that to get it right, we need to drive it harder, then we bring the customer out with us and have them as part of it and make sure they're okay. That's pretty rare, though. Typically, we're using our own cars. We only grab customers' cars anymore on like utilities that we wouldn't use in Arizona, like a Gator, which we have maybe
Gator.
parts for Gator.
Yeah, another shameless plug there, huh?
Yeah, Gator. But on this thing, I got to tell you guys, it's a ton of fun to drive. I got to tell you, the shocks work amazing. I also have to tell you that there's a lot of improvement in different areas when it comes to components. And there's going to be a lot of improvement when it comes to spring and it comes to internals to fit your driving style. And there's going to be a lot of improvement when it comes to computer stuff here shortly, maybe next year. But we're working hard on it, and we'll have a lot available in the next 30 to 45 days when it comes to components. Mitch?
Should we show off the one piece that we actually have here?
What do you got?
The thing that goes on the wheel.
Oh, yes. Walk over here. So you guys, I know that the first thing that a lot of people are going to do is going to be wheel and tire, right? Well, one of the wheels that are available right now is a new forged wheel from Method. Now, let me grab that bead lock out of here too.
I think it's to your right.
It's right here. Can you undo that one? So in the past, in all of our racing, if you take a look around the shop at any of the cars in the background over there, you're gonna find a Method wheel. The reason that we run Method, a couple of reasons. One, extremely strong, don't break it when you're racing. Two, correct offset for geometry so you have no steering wheel feedback. The cool thing about this wheel that's available now is that it's not a cast wheel, this is a forged wheel. That is a ton stronger than previous ones.
She's pretty.
Also,
Shiny.
it's a 5-lug pattern for the Pro R, and it is the correct offset for geometry. So as of right now, I am not aware of another wheel available that has a correct offset. Most of this stuff is in a 4.3 offset, it's not right. 5.2 is barely right. 4.1, 5.1, both of those, 6.1 are the correct wheel offset for a Pro R. So keep that in mind. We'll do some geometry stuff when we show you some of the computer programs that we have from a Faro arm showing all the front end geometry on a board for you. But if you guys are not familiar with what the difference is between a forged and a cast wheel, it's put simply by saying a cast wheel is aluminum that is poured into a mold and then machined to give you the tolerances that you need. A forged wheel is a chunk of aluminum that then is heated and pressed in all directions to compress the molecular structure and create higher strength. That forged wheel then is machined to give you the tolerances that you need, and you're looking at strengths that are through the roof. So a forged wheel is a lot more process, a lot more hassle, typically more money, which those are, but it's the strongest wheel available right now on the right offset. So just a heads up, if you have Pro Rs and you're willing to go out there and spend the money, that's the one to do. Stitch.
Stitch?
Yes. Steve and Mitch.
Oh, I was like, Stitch.
Yeah. You guys have anything you want to add before we're out here?
No, not really. I'd like to go get back to work on it so we can make more products for
Your
you guys.
knuckles are bleeding from banging stuff out.
Yeah.
And one other thing. Pulling the shock off the front of this is a bitch.
Yeah.
Heads up.
It's not easy.
What are some of the things you had to run through?
So I kind of experimented with this side first to see what it was all about.
Yeah.
Basically, I started taking this whole plastic piece off because
Why, Mitch? Because you can't take it off normally,
Yeah.
like dropping it?
No, not at all. When it's fully drooped out, you got all the upper and lower shock bolt out. The fact that it mounts to the lower arm and it has like this 4 to 5 inch long clevis on it, if you will.
Keeps you from dropping it down.
You can't drop it down any farther, and the shock only goes up so high to where it hits the frame itself or the plastic up here. It sucks, just to say the least.
You got to pull some plastics off to make it happen.
Yeah, but then I tried it on that side. I got it to where I didn't have to pull plastics off, but my hands were busted up and it was no fun. So pull the plastic off.
So be ready, you guys, for a little bit more labor when it comes to pulling the shock off of this car. Polaris, give us a call. Maybe we can help you with. Give us one of these things in advance. We'll point some stuff out. Steve.
That's all I got, man. There's nothing. Oh, sorry. I've got one guy. Dude, the question is between Pro R and X3RR, what's the differences?
Oh, that's a huge question,
That's
man.
a huge list.
All right, so X3 over here. Funny that he asked that, and we actually happen to
We
have.
happen to have an X3 and a R.
Yes. Wow, dude.
That's a huge list.
I think that might be a full show. It might be a full deal comparing the two. And maybe that's a really good idea. How about we do that?
Okay.
That'll piss off Can-Am and it's going to piss off Polaris. Let's set this up. I like the idea of doing both.
I'll bring the tent.
At one time.
I'll bring the tent.
Yeah. That's where we're going to put the shit show. In there. In the outhouse. So good idea. We'll set up. We'll do that. How about next Tech Tuesday? We'll do a comparison.
Well, we can do it next Tech Tuesday. And I'm sorry, Pat Bramble is the one who asked that question.
Pat.
I didn't give him a shout out. I apologize on that one.
All right, Pat, thank you for putting us in the doghouse in 2 weeks. It's gonna happen.
Okay,
Steve.
one final question by Jason Reddish. He said, I have a quick question about the Can-Am X3 rack. Does the rack come with a new end at the hub side to install the TLS system? So when you order a rack with the BSD kit, I think it only comes with the inner joint, correct?
Yeah, so
Which would be
racks
rack
come
side.
with rod ends.
Correct.
So the racks come with rod ends on the center link, and then it is up to you to choose the tie rod option. You can then, on the drop down for options, you can choose a tie rod from us. You can choose a tie rod from us with BSD, or if you already have a BSD kit and tie rods, you can choose, I already have one, boom, and what we'll send you, you can keep your 5/8 rod ends and spacers, and you just have a new tie rod adapting the length to our rack. So you can choose whatever you need. If you have nothing, let's say you have stock rack and stock tie rods, then do the drop down for rack with tie rods and BSD. Get everything and you're good to go.
Quick little story real quick. Last week on Thursday, we had a couple come in, and in the morning he was told that he could not get his X3 rack. So he called his wife and said, hey, I have more money to put towards your rack. Okay?
Her rack.
Well, but then we called him and said, actually, you can get the rack. So he had to retake the money. And so later the day, she was explaining to me how she sacrificed her rack for his rack.
You know what?
They were a great couple. They were pretty rad to talk to, but I think they would have fun with both racks regardless. But she made a sacrifice for her rack for our rack, which I thought was pretty cool.
So all of you men out there, there are great women out there that will sacrifice their rack for your rack.
Yeah.
That's the moral to the story. Steve,
I'm going to take it away.
Send us out
Guys,
of
if you're looking to buy a rack or you're looking to buy front limit straps for your RS1, please visit www.shocktherapyusa.com. Or if you have any questions, please call in 623-217-4959.